Welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. China is holding its massive military parade today, showcasing advanced weapons to demonstrate its military strength. Attending the event will be Russia's President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who arrived in China yesterday with his daughter Chue. And regarding suggestions that the warming of relations between China, Russia, and their allies poses a challenge to Washington, President Donald Trump said he was not concerned about an axis forming against the United States. For the first time in over a year, South Korea has taken over the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of September. And President Lee Jae-myung is set to attend the UN General Assembly in New York later this month. Today, for the first time in 66 years, the leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia came together at celebrations marking China's 80th Victory Day anniversary. The Victory Day military parade has just kicked off. For more, we have our Shin Ha-young on the line for us. Ha-young, fill us in on this.
The China celebration of 80 years since Victory Day is just getting underway in Tiananmen Square, Beijing. And China marks September 3rd, 1945 as the day of its victory over Japan and the end of World War II, the day after Japan signed its unconditional surrender to China and the other allies. And the day was designated an official Memorial Day in 2014. And during the 70-minute long military parade, China is expected to showcase strategic weapons for the first time, including the FH-97 unmanned combat aircraft and the DF-41 intercontinental ballistic missile, which is said to have a range of 12,000 to 15,000 kilometers. And 45 military units will also march through Tiananmen Square to display their strength. And around 25 world leaders are attending, with the spotlight on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Russian President Vladimir Putin, who are appearing together for the first time.
Right, and Ha-young, South Korea's National Assembly Speaker is also present at the event, right? Is there any chance that he will meet Kim Jong-un there?
Right, indeed. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung is not attending, but National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik is raising speculation about a possible encounter with a North Korean leader. However, so far, intelligence authorities here have reportedly ruled out any such prospect. Ruling Democratic Party lawmaker Park Sun-won said South Korea's intelligence agency views any meaningful meeting as unlikely since Woo's protocol rank is far below that of a head of state. Now, take a listen to what the National Assembly Speaker had to say before leaving for Beijing yesterday.
I decided to make this visit because strengthening Korea-China ties during this period of change will benefit our economy. If I get a chance to meet the North Korean leader, I would talk about peace on the Korean peninsula. But I'm not sure if that will happen. I'll have to see when I'm there.
Woo will nonetheless meet with senior officials from China's National People's Congress and State Council before returning home on Friday. Now, that's all I have for this hour, but I'll bring more updates in our later newscast. Back to you, Eunji.
All right, Ha-young, thank you for that report. Do keep us updated. So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is making his debut at a multilateral event at China's Victory Day celebrations today with his young daughter there with him. Experts now say this marks a sharp change in his approach to diplomacy and shows his intent to train his daughter as his heir. Our foreign affairs correspondent Woo Soo-young has more.
Attending China's Victory Day parade, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appears to be asserting North Korea's nuclear statehood, while signaling that his daughter is being groomed as his successor. Kim arrived in Beijing on Tuesday by special train, his first visit in 6 years. North Korean state media reported he was greeted at Beijing railway station by senior Chinese officials, including Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The unexpected appearance of Kim's daughter, Kim Jue, has drawn great attention. She was seen standing directly behind her father during the welcoming ceremony, receiving treatment akin to North Korea's number 2. Jong Song-jang, vice president of the Sejong Institute, views this as a clear succession signal.
When Kim Jong-un turned 8 years old, his father tapped him as his successor. However, as he was not given sufficient diplomatic training, he remained a leader of an isolated state until he participated in the summits with China, South Korea, and the United States in 2018. Determined not to pass down this unfortunate experience to his daughter, Kim Jong-un seems to have brought her to China, firmly resolved to introduce her early onto the diplomatic stage and provide her with systematic training.
This, in fact, marks Kim's first participation in a gathering of dozens of world leaders, a notable departure from the one-on-one summits that have defined his diplomacy so far. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Tiananmen Square would present North Korea as part of a trio of nuclear powers, as Kim continues to seek recognition of Pyongyang as a nuclear state. His inspection of a missile production factory before travelling to China appears intended for such projection, as his on-site visit was reported by state media for foreign distribution, but not circulated domestically. During his trip, Kim is expected to hold bilateral talks with Xi and Putin. But with Beijing, Moscow and Pyongyang pursuing different strategic priorities, analysts believe a formal trilateral summit beyond a photo session is highly unlikely. The implications for inter-Korean and US-North Korea relations remain uncertain. Observers say Kim may consult Xi about a potential summit with US President Donald Trump, as he did in 2018. Still, Seoul officials have cautioned against premature optimism, warning that Pyongyang shows no sign of abandoning its nuclear program. At the same time, South Korea has reiterated its willingness to pursue dialogue in parallel with Washington if conditions allow. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The world is closely watching China's massive military parade at Tiananmen Square, where Beijing is showcasing its latest weapons with global leaders in attendance. For more on the significance of today's event, we're joined by Professor Joel Atkinson from the Graduate School of International and Area Studies at Hangul University of Foreign Studies. Professor Atkinson, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's nice to be with you.
So we could see that leaders from North Korea, China, Russia walking and standing by side together at Tiananmen Square this morning. And they're now gathered in Beijing, and eyes are now on whether they will hold a trilateral summit and strengthen their cooperation against the West there. Will we be able to see that happen today?
Well, there's never been such a three-way meeting ever, from the Cold War until now. So on that basis, we shouldn't expect it. And while Kim Jong-un might want a trilateral summit, I'm not sure that Xi Jinping would see the benefit in it. Not only would it further strengthen this perception of a threatening China, North Korea, Russia axis when Xi probably feels enough of that has been done, at least for a while, but he might also feel it diminishes his stature a little, makes him something of a third wheel. We'll have to see. It will certainly be big news if the three do get together.
Right, and through today's military parade, analysts say China appears eager to showcase its growing military power to rival the United States and the West. What do you think is behind China's intention, and how would you assess the country's military capabilities?
Well, you should keep in mind that the main focus is domestic. It's to evoke patriotic sentiments and support for the CPC's leadership, to show that the Communist Party has made China a proud, strong country. And all of these foreign leaders coming to pay their respects, and also that the Chinese military honors and is loyal to Xi Jinping and the party. The US and its allies like Japan don't really need a parade to know what weapons China has, but it does project some confidence and this kind of attitude that Beijing won't back down, that has the will to carry out this, this struggle against American hegemony, as it calls it. And it certainly has formidable capabilities. In many areas, it still lags behind the US, but it's catching up in many ways. And more importantly, perhaps unlike the United States, it has that industrial capacity to mass produce the kinds of weapons that win wars.
Right, and Kim Jong-un's this trip to Beijing marks a rare departure from his, isolated and nuclear-armed state. And some analysts say Kim Jong-un will ask Xi Jinping to visit Pyongyang during the North Korea-China summit meeting. What's your take on this?
Well, I think Xi is overdue to visit Pyongyang. He last went there in 2019. Seoul is also pressuring Xi Jinping to visit South Korea for APEC at the end of October. but he would see that as a concession. He hasn't come here since President Park Geun-hye allowed the US to install the THAAD missile defense system in 2016. So perhaps he'll go to Pyongyang before coming to South Korea to make it seem less like he's, kind of bending to Seoul's will. Also, Putin went to Pyongyang last year, so she may want to go to keep things kind of balanced in that way.
All right, and a lot of attention is also on Kim Jong-un's daughter, Choo-hae, who could perhaps be the next leader of North Korea. And there is speculation that, she could be the next leader, right?
Yeah, well, she certainly seems to be being groomed for the top job. This is her first official trip abroad, and it would be a sign of respect to China for Xi Jinping to be the first leader she meets. And, visiting Beijing is an important part of securing succession in North Korea. Kim Jong-un went to Beijing before becoming leader, and Kim's father, Kim Jong-il, he went a few years after being designated as the successor.
I see. All right, Professor Atkins, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has rejected suggestions that the increased closeness of the anti-Western bloc may pose any challenges to the United States on the global stage. President Donald Trump emphasized the good relationship he has with Xi Jinping. Our Ian-jin reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has dismissed any concerns over the close ties being showcased by North Korea, China, and Russia. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office on Tuesday that he had a good relationship with President Xi and that China, quote, needs us more than we need them, rejecting suggestions that the three-way unity between Putin, Xi, and Kim would pose any challenge. Separately, Trump told the Scott Jennings radio show that America has, quote, the most powerful military forces in the world and that military forces wouldn't be used against the U.S. Meanwhile, President Trump on Tuesday also dismissed rumors concerning his health after unfounded rumors swirled on social media when Trump hadn't been seen publicly since his cabinet meeting last Wednesday and had a clear weekend schedule. When asked by a reporter, Trump said he was busy over the Labor Day weekend giving media interviews and visiting his Virginia golf course, calling the speculation fake news, stating that he was very active.
Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend.
The White House has said Trump was diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, which is a fairly common condition for older adults. And as for the bruising on his hand, the press secretary said it's from frequent handshaking and the use of aspirin, which Trump takes regularly to reduce the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Ian-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea has resumed its rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the first time in 15 months, at a time of heightened tension on the Korean Peninsula. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will attend the United Nations General Assembly this month and will also lead a Security Council meeting during the visit. As the rotating president's role is expected to influence discussions on key global issues, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the war in Ukraine, and shape global public opinion. Currently, as the post of South Korea's permanent representative to the United Nations remains vacant, Deputy Ambassador Kim Sang-jin will likely preside over major meetings. The President Lee Jae-myung is set to address the UN General Assembly for the first time later this month to share his vision for peace on the Korean Peninsula. He will also lead an open debate on artificial intelligence as chair of the UN Security Council. Here's our senior top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min.
President Lee Jae-myung will attend the UN General Assembly in New York on September 23rd to address its 80th session.
President Lee will share with the international community the Republic of Korea's experience of overcoming a crisis of democracy and recovering from it. He will also present our government's vision and policies on key global issues. including the Korean Peninsula.
He is expected to lay out his vision for peace on the peninsula and resuming dialogue with North Korea. This as the leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia gather in Beijing this week for a Chinese military parade. Just last week, the heads of South Korea and the U.S. met and shared their thoughts on resuming dialogue with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Eyes are also on whether there will be another Trump summit, just 4 weeks after their first meeting, with U.S. President Donald Trump also set to address the UN chamber on the same day. This comes ahead of the upcoming APEC leaders meeting in South Korea's Gyeongju this October, where Trump is also expected to attend. And the meeting means more than just that for the South Korean leader, as he resumes multilateral summit diplomacy, 3 months after making his debut at the G7 summit in Canada.
President Lee will strengthen solidarity with the international community and carry out various diplomatic activities to enhance Korea's status as a responsible global power.
South Korea has assumed the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council for the month of September, and Lee will preside over an open debate on September 24th on AI and related global peace. He will be the first South Korean president to lead such a session as chair. The presidential office says it hopes this will serve to reaffirm Korea's global standing as a trusted partner and bolster its leadership in multilateral summit diplomacy. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Eastern Afghanistan was hit by a 5.2 magnitude aftershock on Tuesday, 2 days after a powerful earthquake killed over 1,400 people. According to Taliban officials, the death toll has now reached at least 1,400, with more than 3,000 people injured and over 5,400 homes destroyed in the provinces of Kunar and Nangarhar. The tremors flattened entire mountain villages. Rescuers face challenges due to the region's rugged terrain, blocked roads, and ongoing aftershocks. Humanitarian groups warn the death toll may climb sharply. The Afghan Red Crescent Society, UN agencies, and NGOs are operating under severe constraints, with insufficient supplies and funding cuts further hindering rescue and relief efforts. Airlifts for the injured, temporary shelters, and medical teams have been deployed, and aid pledges are flowing in from the UK, EU, India, and China. In Israel, tens of thousands of reservists began reporting for duty on Tuesday as Israel prepares for a major offensive to seize Gaza City. The Israel Defense Forces began mobilizing large numbers of reservists on Tuesday after calling up 60,000 for an expanded offensive in Gaza City. According to reports, this was the largest single call-up since the war began almost 2 years ago. Opinions remain divided within military ranks, with IDF Chief of Staff Ayar Zamir publicly having warned that the offensive could endanger hostages and overstretch military resources. Meanwhile, up to 80% of Israelis reportedly want a hostage-focused, negotiated ceasefire instead of continued military operations. However, despite warnings, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed IDF soldiers on the same day, saying that what began in Gaza must end in Gaza. Israel currently occupies approximately 75% of the Gaza Strip. A federal judge in the United States ruled on Tuesday that Google will not be required to sell its Chrome browser or Android operating system. This decision rejects a part of a broader antitrust effort by the Justice Department, which aimed to challenge Google's market dominance. Instead, the court has mandated that Google must share certain search data with competitors to foster competition in online search engines. The judge also prohibited Google from entering exclusive search distribution deals, but allowed continued payments to partners such as Apple and AT&T to set Google as the default, citing concerns that cutting this off would harm both partners and consumers. The Vatican is bringing Pope Francis' ecological vision into action by inaugurating a 55-acre educational and vocational center at its Castel Gandolfo estate. The Holy See's first on-site vocational school, Borgo Laudato Si, will formally open on Friday under the blessing of Pope Leo XIV, who spent his first summer in papal service at the site. At the center of the compound is a solar-powered greenhouse shaped like St. Peter's Square colonnade, accompanied by a 10-room facility for environmental learning. The center operates under zero-waste standards, featuring AI-driven smart irrigation and rainwater harvesting, while completely eliminating the use of plastics.
As we step into September, the sticky nights are finally easing, so if you dress for the afternoon, it might have felt a bit breezy on the way to work this morning. However, the midday sun is still blazing with warm, humid air continuing to flow in, making it today feel hot and muggy in the afternoon. Meanwhile, heat wave advisories remain in place for certain parts of Korea as well as Jeju Island. So with unstable air overhead, thunderstorm clouds are popping up across the country. Southern regions will see scattered showers with thunderstorms with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast along with strong winds. Late summer heat continues to dominate across the country. Seoul and Chuncheon will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Daegu, Daejeon, Gwangju, Jeju will be topping out at 32 this afternoon. On and off rain stays with us through this week, and with that rain, temperatures will finally begin to ease, and next week should bring more comfortable and cooler conditions to the country.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.